reality. And with continued growth of world population, rapid urbanization and the impact of climate change on sensitive agricultural areas, the threat of conflict has increased. And Jean Lambert has mentioned shortly this dimension of the problem. And that is true everywhere, not only in the regions where most of the participants are coming from, but I would say that is true in Latin America, it's true in Africa, it's true in the European Union, in Europe, etc. If we are nearing ourselves to this challenge from different angles, for example, on the borderline between Germany and the Czech Republic, we have a conflict how to combine the proposal from the German side to give back the river to the natural borders in the area to avoid floods, etc. While on the Czech side, there's a discussion how to use the Elbe River for transport, for energy production, etc. So even within the European Union, we are challenged with the question how we should organize water system management. While there are numerous encouraging examples of water cooperation and joint water management structures, like for instance for the Mekong Delta and river system, we still lack sufficient systematic approaches for almost 60% of the world's 276 international river basins, some of them located in most fragile regions. This includes also the River Jordan. And we have water corporations that did so far not deliver results that are satisfactory for all of us, like on the Indus, or that fail completely, like in the catastrophe of the disappearance of the Aral Sea in Russia. I'm aware that the United Nations reports tend to emphasize on the energy potential of water, but I would like to point out that the conflict of interest between upstream energy production and downstream irrigation and flood management needs has to be solved. I'm also aware that the organizers of this event stress on the right of the Kashmiri people to harvest hydropower from their rivers and are unhappy about the India-Pakistan-Indus agreement that was concluded without their democratic involvement, even if I learned also some news today in the panel already. But I don't share the view that nations that happen to live upstream can do whatever they want with a river, regardless of the effects for people living downstream. This is wrong in the case of Turkey, controlling the water supplies for Iraq and Syria with its Atatürk dam. This would be wrong for Uganda or Kenya if they would unilaterally decide to take much more water out of the Lake Victoria at the expense of farmers in Egypt. And the injustice in Israel's government's denial of the right to access to water to Palestinians is just another example, rightly highlighted by this forum, that access to water is a human right and should never be a weapon, from my point of view, used in political or nation-state conflict. Rivers don't belong to one nation, whether recognized as such or not. Fresh water is an increasingly scarce resource of our planet, and access to it should be managed as a global public good. While technologies for renewable energies are advancing quickly, the application as an alternative to harvesting energy from dam projects remains underdeveloped. As long as this is the case, I advise to focus on the downstream perspective and the impact on farming and ecosystems. I say it also in the light of current development ambitions and the implied need for access to more energy in a number of regions in the world. And of course, the demographic factor in a lot of regions in the world will increase this challenge. The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Non-Navigational Uses of International Watercourses has tried to supply the needed legal reference framework for the global task ahead of us already in 1997. It has still not reached, until today, the necessary number of ratifications to enter into force. And that's why I want to repeat, for the politicians, it is a daily challenge to deal with this either already achieved results in the struggle for the right of water or for their future challenges. The reluctance of states to ratify this convention is worrying. As an alternative, we might put some hope into the United Nations ECE Convention on the Protection or Use of Transboundary Water Courses and international lakes to find greater acceptance. Also, non-European countries could now theoretically accede to it. But both conventions make it evident that we still have to bridge as a long way between nice public statements and strong legal commitments. And that's why I want to focus two more ideas or proposals on the relationship between water and trade. Serving in the European Parliament's Committee on Trade, you may allow me to share some thoughts on that. For the question of water cooperation. In principle, trade offers an option to balance regional differences in access to water by trading, for instance, agricultural products that would grow but would not grow at the same time elsewhere, or by trading the so-called virtual water component of manufactured goods. 90% of global water consumption can be allocated to industry and agriculture. However, this option should not be abused by simply buying up agricultural potential in another part of the world in order to cover up miserable water governance in one's own region. I can understand that the people of Kashmir are angry about being deprived of benefiting from their comparative advantage in water access, and I share the Palestinian frustration over their continued artificial water supply shortage. Until not long ago, we could associate global water savings to trade, in particular through trade flows between North America and East Asia and Mexico. But with changes in global production, the industrialization in the emerging economies and the erection of entire new cities in what was previously farmland or rural areas, the world now learns about the new phenomenon of land and thereby of water grabbing in other parts in the world. Not even mentioning the question of mega cities in a lot of the new developing world. Let me point out that trading away water deficits works out only for those who can afford it. Poor people do not have the chance and even not the money to buy food grown elsewhere. If industrial large-scale farming is established in African regions, the related water consumption can literally dry out small-scale farming in the vicinity. The victims cannot grow food for own consumptions any longer and cannot compensate it with own money. So let us remember that while we are stressing the fight, the struggle for water, when we are celebrating the World Water Day, that is the right to water as a human right. And we have to realize that several important documents recognize this right to access to clean water. Let me take an important example, the United Nations Convention on Rights of the Child. Diarrhea caused by polluted water causes more deaths than HIV, malaria, tuberculosis together, according to the WHO. Improving access to drinking water and sanitation could save the life of more than 2 million children every year. And the WHO estimates that the minimum daily water quantity needed per capita are about 20 liters. Others argue that in order to meet decent hygienic levels, this minimum should cover or should be defined at the level of 50 liters. Here in Belgium, where the European Parliament is sitting, some regions have established the right to water by providing a defined quantity for each household for free. Payments begin only above the quantity. Also the Netherlands, France and Britain have legally or even constitutionally entitled this population with the right to water. For others, providing water is one of the most important tasks of their municipalities. And we are just discussing in the European Parliament, together with the European Council and the Commission in a trilogue, the relationship of the so-called concession directive on public goods. And that leads us to the question, is it possible that with such a directive, indirectly the municipalities who are under very heavy financial burden due to the financial and economic crisis the European Union is in, they have to sell the concessions for exploiting the water supply to private firms. What does it mean to this right, which I just described, which has already established in some countries of the European Union, but that will be linked to the international trade issue and challenges by the public procurement agreements to other regions in the world. So here we have the reorganization of the water management system inside the European Union with a water system management outside. So the one directive is very closely linked to the other directive, and we are challenged all together very seriously and full of responsibility to deal with this question if and when we are reorganizing the whole question of water. In the EU, we currently witness an extremely successful collection of signatures for the first EU citizens' initiative addressing precisely the right to water and fighting business dreams of privatization of this service. But nature itself makes it a precondition to provide each human being with the needed water, that we cooperate along the water basins, beyond political borders, in both terms of the sense, meaning between states, political borders, but also political borders between different political groups. We have to cooperate. We have to find together the right solution and the management to avoid conflicts or war on that issue. In this simple truth lies maybe also a certain hope and an opportunity that water teaches us a need for cooperation that could be fruitful for other development needs as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Scholz, for that very comprehensive intervention. Of course, water right is a fundamental human right. I totally agree with you. And water should be beyond political borders. I hope that day comes one day that we have no borders, at least for water.